Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. I normally talk about Dungeons and Dragons, usually 5e as it happens. Today is about the Curse of Strahd. This is a Dungeon Master guide, so if you are a player, actually it won't matter if you stick around. You can be a player, a Dungeon Master. There are no spoilers for this video. How's that? That doesn't often happen with a Dungeon Master guide, but for today it won't make any difference whatsoever, so stick around. I'm going to talk about the techniques for creating dark humour, or humorous dark things. I want to make it clear that trying to explain how to use dark humour and how it works and then giving you examples is really hard. It spent all week plus a bit more trying to figure out how to make it all work, and I wasn't too sure if I could pull it off. We will see how we go. First off, I want to make it clear dark humour is always risky, so don't expect not everybody's going to find it funny. In fact, you may even offend somebody. It is more likely that you will offend somebody than you are to actually get them to have a big ha ha ha. So I would be very careful when you're using dark humour. Sparing, don't use it all the time. Just bear in mind that you need to have people who are willing to tolerate your dark humour references, as it might be. Okay, I have about 8 different examples for you and techniques. We're going to go through them. There are only 2 techniques illustrated or talked about in the Curse of Strahd, and we're going to cover 8 of them. 1. Follow a bad scenario to the worst, outrageous, terrible outcome that you can think of. And I can't think of anything better than the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. It's one of the best examples of this type of humour and dark humour. My example here is Wile E. Coyote runs off a cliff chasing the Roadrunner, and then of course, as it usually tends to happen, he falls to the bottom of a very high cliff. It doesn't actually kill him usually, because coyotes sort of like that. But then of course, to ram things down your throat to make it clear that the situation was terrible and to get a laugh out of you, you then drop an anvil on top of him just to make it clear that he's suffered some sort of traumatic injury. Of course, Coyote survives this, but non-player characters or even characters in your game aren't necessarily going to survive these events. But using them is certainly a form of dark humour. Now, number 2 is presenting a major traumatic event. You present an event or a situation, and then you present or talk about it in a way that is trivial. You make it a trivial occurrence, as if it's normal occurrences that you would expect all the time, even though it's a major traumatic event. The best example I can think of is the Addams Family. My example now, references, it's like a smorgasbord, the Addams Family, for dark humour, and this particular type of humour in particular. But the one I want to talk about is the daughter. The Addams Family daughter has she's called Wednesday, and normally what she will do, if you watch the movie that is she will electrocute her brother Pugsley for the umpteenth time as normal kids play. So what we're taking is something that would normally kill you and of course cause you great strife and pain and anguish, which of course in normal life you would never ever consider, is presented as a normal trivial occurrence, just kids playing. So that's another form of dark humour if you want to use that. Number 3 is sarcasm. I'm really good at sarcasm, a lot of people are. So use sarcasm to swap a small insignificant situation with a really horrific event. And I can't think of anything better than the Terminator. The Terminator has one scene in particular which I think illustrates this the best. So my example is this. The Terminator walks into a police station looking for Sarah Connor, and he says, "I'll be back," to the police officer he is questioning. Now that police officer didn't provide him with any pertinent information, in fact blocked all of his questioning, and of course he's a bit miffed about all of this, so he says, "I'll be back," to the police officer, but what he really means is, "Screw you, I'm the Terminator, I'm going to come back with my guns and a truck very shortly, and it's all going to be over for you." because essentially what follows is he will drive his truck through the police station front door, pull out his guns and shoot everybody in the cop shop. So this is another form of dark humour. There's not a lot of dark humour in the Terminator movie, but there are a couple of references, and this is probably the best example I could find. Number 4 is you find a mundane parallel. So that's something that's ordinary day life sort of stuff, something that's fairly normal, and you find the parallel that is also a horrible situation or concept. My example here is the TV sitcom family, The Partridges. The Partridge Family is a really good example, you know, fairly standard family for TV, nothing sort of out of the normal. And then what we do is, of course, it's a TV show, so of course it's not real, but the contrast to that in terms of being dark and dank and using dark humour is another sitcom show that was released called The Munsters. Now, essentially they have a contrast within that family, which is a normal person surrounded by Frankenstein, a vampire, well, a couple of vampires, actually 3 vampires, if I believe. So that is the contrast. You're trying to contrast something mundane with something that is very dark and dank, or kooky in this case. I believe the Munsters were always considered quite kooky. Okay, number 5 is speak the unspeakable thoughts that sane and gentile people would not say, no matter how inappropriate. Essentially, you're trying to say something that people wouldn't say to your face without sort of having to sort of blush or feel like they have stepped on somebody's toes. My example here would be thank you for smoking is a good example in terms of a movie. So essentially the theme behind this in terms of thank you for smoking is thank you for buying smokes and making the company really rich from all of the cigarettes that you've smoked and sacrificing your body and putting up with the lung cancer and various health issues that you will die from. So that is, of course, a very inappropriate thing to say. It is the unspeakable thought that comes out of your mouth. It's kind of like having a brain fart. If you know what a brain fart is, that's essentially when you think of something you should never say and you decide to voice it. Another really good example, it's a treasure trove, this one. My example here is Sheriff Brody saying we're going to need a bigger boat after he sees a massive shark that they are hunting. Now, the reference here is that it's an unspeakable thing to say, because what he really should be saying is we're all going to die, but he said it in a slightly different way. Essentially, it's very, very true. They will need a bigger boat, because if they don't, the shark is going to sink them. What I want to say about Jaws movie in particular is if you go and watch that, you'll see many, many references that are very dark, certainly things that seem very inappropriate that the characters will say within the movie, and you can use them to your heart's content. That's why I pulled out a reference from the Jaws movie in particular, because it's a very good example of this. Okay, number 6. This is on the bright side. I want you to look on the bright side. Something terrible has happened to you, but you're going to look on the bright side. This is one of the more annoying aspects that you can use in your presentation. So presenting a trivial concept or idea as a positive, it might be a detail, it could be a fact, it could be a story, and you contrast it with a terrible event or situation that somebody or something is dealing with. The best example that I can think of right now is that you have no teeth. All of your teeth have been extracted, you've got no teeth left, and somebody says to you, well, now you don't need to worry about brushing your teeth or flossing. So they're trying to look on the positive side, on the bright side of what is essentially a really horrible situation. Losing all of your teeth is it's not something that you would normally have to deal with, right? And it would be quite horrible to have that happen. So that is another way of presenting dark humour. You can see where I'm getting at when I say dark humour can come off as being just being uncouth. Number 7. You can use a critical fumble table on a natural one when you roll attack rolls, ability checks, or saving throws. I've actually done a video on this topic. For those of you who are unaware, you can go and check that out. Critical fumbles. Now when I talk about critical fumbles, the idea is you need to have a critical fumble on your table that represents a range of humorous mishaps. It could be you catch on fire, it could be you throw your weapon and it winds up 10 feet away or something like that. Whatever you think would be quite amusing given the situation. And you might need to sort of change that up as you go. Now when I talk about critical fumbles and using a critical fumble table, I would make it clear to you as a dungeon master, non-player characters and your monsters, do not apply critical fumbles to player characters, because as a general rule, most players do not like a critical fumble table. Critical hit table, yes, but critical fumble, leave it alone. My example here, I'm going to use Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean crashes his car, and essentially he's rolled his natural one, and of course he's putting it off as just sort of, look what I've done, aren't I clever? When in fact most people would be quite distraught and probably maybe crying and ringing their insurance company. But Mr. Bean feels quite pleased with himself. So this is sort of like a serious, taking the serious and turning it into sort of more of a humorous mishap. And this is in terms of the character. You can do it many different ways though. Okay, the last one, all NPCs or non-player characters will tell like jokes or speak in a funny voice or behave like an idiot. Can I make it clear? You should never have all of the non-player characters or monsters doing this sort of stuff. It don't matter how good you are at doing dark humor, never make it all the characters. That is actually going to be a real problem. You're going to turn it into like a spoof rather than a Dungeons and Dragons game that's supposed to be scary. So don't do that. Selective NPCs. Don't do it all the time. My example here is taken from Austin Powers, and Dr. Evil from Austin Powers is a really good example. Now we've got the traditional evil person who has a volcano as a headquarters. They've got a hairless cat. A lot of this is taken directly from Blofeld and James Bond. Blofeld dressed exactly like Dr. Evil. He had a shaved head, and of course he's got a scar because we've got to give the villain a scar. So he's sort of made up to look silly, but not only that, he's sort of based on a real villain that was actually quite scary and quite effective in his use in a story. But we've also got the fact that he also talks like an idiot and says idiotic things and behaves like an idiot. So hence, this is how you can play it out. Now I would say this is the worst type of dark humor you can use. When you start doing this sort of thing, I feel like this is the lowest form of dark humor you can utilize. I would suggest using the other forms of dark humor I have presented to you. I think they're going to be far more successful. Now, if you are looking for more videos on the Curse of Strahd Dungeon Master Guides that can help you out, you should find a playlist called Curse of Strahd Dungeon Master Guide, and it's got a whole bunch of videos in there covering different topics. If you're not interested in the Curse of Strahd and you're just interested in other topics, whether you be a player or a dungeon master, I have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters. You're welcome to go and check those out. Now, if you want to support the channel so I keep doing more videos like this, you can do that by going to my Patreon page and joining there and getting the content that comes through there. You can also buy things online through my Amazon affiliate link and my Book Depository affiliate links. Those are all down in the description. Or you can buy stuff from the merchandise shelf underneath the video. Or you can just watch my videos. It's perfectly fine with me. I can live with that. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.